WNST, Tassenbund, folks that have been joining us here over the part of my 27 years on radio. This guy has come in and out over the course of time. I obviously remember being a young lad, and I can't tell you how many times I heard Vince Bagley on the 6 o'clock news say Chris McCarron was the winning jockey in the 9th race out of Laurel or Bowie or wherever it was, and he rode a lot of winning mounts and many, many years in the game. Now is down in Kentucky living the good life in semi-retirement, but he's also working in the racing industry. We welcome back on one of the great jockeys of all time, and certainly a guy we had some affinity for around here when he would come back and visit and ride big mounts. We welcome Chris McCarron back onto the program. Chris, how are you, man? Welcome in.
Hey, thanks, Nestor. I'm doing really well, thank you.
Well,
yeah, I had a lot of fun in Maryland. I rode there for 4 years and broke my maiden at Bowie on February 9th, 1974. And the end of that year, I had 546 wins to break Sandy's record, which he set the year before. And of course, I love Pimlico. It's one of my favorite tracks to ride at, and won a couple of Preaknesses, so had a lot of fun there in Baltimore for sure.
Well, there's no doubt about that, and you went on your way, and we see the horse racing industry every year for 27 years. I've talked about, is the Preakness leaving Baltimore? They're fixing up Laurel, which they've done. Now we have this Supreme Court ruling on Monday, which is really going to change literally everything, football, baseball, basketball, all those things. But here we are, it's 2018, and last I checked, the Derby winner still checks into the Stakes Barn up at Old Hilltop on Winter Avenue. And Justify and Bob Baffert this year, out of the rain, on the back end of this super horse and American Pharoah, we can talk about this being a super horse at this point because of what happened in the Derby against 20 horses over a sloppy track and the way Mike Smith rode that horse 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Mike rode him with incredible confidence. He really never took much hold of him. He was just sitting there as a passenger, letting him roll along. For him to go 45 and change for the half and keep going on that track was amazing. You use the term super horse, and I think he is. I think this horse has a good chance to sweep. And Baffert's got an incredible record of Derby winners going on to win the Preakness. He's 4 for 4. And Justify is also 4 for 4. He's unbeaten and broke the Apollo curse. No horse had won the Derby, having not raced as a 2-year-old since 1890-something or other. And this horse has a lot of intrigue to him and a lot of talent to go along with it.
He is Chris McCarron. He knows a little bit about being in the winner's circle with the Black Eyed Sues in 1987. Got it done with Ali Sheba, and also in 1992, which I had forgotten about Pine Bluff, but there you go. And, the winner of the Derby always comes into this thing expected to win to some degree. Maybe not when it's a long shot in a Giacomo or something like that, but most years the Derby winner comes in, and there's a lot of reason for the fanfare. It's the toughest race to win, and certainly became tougher 2 weeks ago with the weather conditions. And I always think when that second, break happens on the outside, somewhere out by Lexington, I like to kid around and say that it is amazing the power of which that happens. We always have a smaller field here at Pimlico, and a lot of the also-rans in Kentucky sort of gear up to go after the winner again in Belmont in 3 weeks. It's not natural for the horses to be coming back in 2 weeks like this.
Not these days. It used to be. It used to be a lot easier for a horse to come back in 2 weeks and run his race. But these days, for some reason, the horses just don't bounce back the way they used to. But everything I read about Justify and the way he's training, Baffert arrived in Louisville on Sunday night and loved the way the horse went over the track yesterday. He had a real strong gallop, so he seems to be on his game. They put new shoes on him yesterday, and he's probably going to go to Baltimore on Wednesday, I think, tomorrow. And so all the signs are pointing to him being a legitimate 3 to 5 favorite. That's what I think he'll be. He'll probably go off 3 to 5, and deservedly so.
Every year we get together this time of the year, and I guess this is part of the sadness of the modern era. We have that going on with baseball around here, where I talk about baseball and wonder how many people are engaged in it. But horse racing, back in the era where you were breaking your maiden at Bowie in the 1970s, it was a dominant force, along with the Colts and the Orioles here and all that, and times change. The horse racing industry, we had worried greatly, certainly in Maryland, about its health when the purses were going down and when casinos were popping up in Delaware and in West Virginia all around us. Now we have all of that, and we have the Supreme Court ruling. And I think the industry of horse racing feels to me to be healthier and certainly upticking from where it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where folks were trying to figure out how to make money into this industry. I know you're here on behalf of a group of folks that put together people who own horses. And look, you were a jockey, and you came into this thing, honestly, you love the animals and all that. Now you're on the other side of this. As you get older, you get to know so many owners, so much about the business of horse racing and what makes it vibrant and what makes it feasible, quite frankly, for these animals to run and folks to go out and be a part of this. But you're involved in Team Valor International right now. I know you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Team Valor International is the most successful racing syndicate in the industry. The vast majority of horses that Barry Irwin buys, he buys most of the horses from Europe because they're ready-made. He doesn't buy yearlings and unraced 2-year-olds. He wants to know what's in the package. He doesn't want to have any surprises. Every horse is vetted thoroughly by a veterinarian and make sure they're sound and in good health. And I was at Churchill the Thursday before the Derby, and we ran 2 horses. The first one was second, and the second one won. And I got my picture taken my first week on the job with Team Valor. It's run by Barry Irwin. He's been in the business for over 30 years. He's got over 300 clients in the syndicate. There are several partnerships, and it's easy to get in. You can get in for as little as $6,000 at owning a horse at 2.5%. You can buy any percentage you want. The offerings come up quite often. And if you want to get involved, go to teamvalor.com and click on Getting Started and read all the information about how to become an owner. It's very easy, and it can be quite inexpensive. If you own 2.5% of a horse, everyone knows the expenses of a horse are high. It's expensive to keep a horse in training. It costs around $55,000 a year to do it right, and that's what Team Valor does. They do it right. But you can get in, like I said, for about 2.5% for about $6,000, and it's a very exciting way to get involved in the racing industry.
So $1,000 a week is what it costs to keep a horse safe and sound and fit. I don't know those numbers, and again, the industry kind of comes to my doorstep once or twice a year. Maybe Maryland Million. Certainly, if we were to get the Breeders' Cup at Laurel here into the future. And I know, at one point you worked for Magna, at Santa Anita, and working on the inner workings. What should a regular person coming out to the track this weekend? Maybe only comes once a year. Maybe likes to put a hat on like my wife and go out and make some $2 bets. The inner workings of the industry and where it's headed at this point. Are you happy with the direction it's going, Chris?
I agree with your comment. I think the decline has leveled off. Yes, the racing industry has fallen on hard times. The competition for the entertainment dollar is very keen. There's so many different things for people to do, how to spend their disposable money. But a lot of good things have happened in the industry in the last couple of years, and I think Maryland, I think Frank Stronach and the Magna Group have done a fantastic job at Laurel refurbishing that place and re-energizing the place. I've been there a few times where they've had good crowds. It's not like the old days. I don't think we'll ever get back to the old days where you'll have 30,000, 40,000 on a Saturday or a Sunday, but nonetheless, it has. I think it's leveled off, and I think we got blue skies ahead.
I like to tell the story of my first Preakness back in 1984. I was running film for the News American, and I passed Howard Cosell next to the ABC trucks back by the Stakes Barn. You know where I'm talking about. It's not that far of a walk between the Stakes Barn and the media gate, and where the little elevators run up to the press box there, and all those charts with all those autographs from jockeys and horsemen and media personalities, and what this race represents. represented in the 50s and the 60s when you came about in the early 70s. What are your thoughts when you walk into a Laurel or when you go to Pimlico and know that they haven't done much there since your era here? Your memories come flooding back when this was a very, very tender part of your career, and you've gone on to do all these things as a Hall of Fame rider and running and owning horses and doing all that. But I mean, your first steps as a foal, as a jockey, were here in Maryland, right?
Right. I'll tell you, the Preakness was a big influence on my decision to move to the West Coast, where the money was so much greater than it was in Maryland at the time. On Preakness Day, Shoemaker, Pincay, Cordero, Vasquez, all these guys would come in town, Nestor, and they'd basically take over the card. When owners and trainers found out these guys are coming in town, that's some services they wanted. They wanted the best jockeys in the country to be riding their horses. And so a lot of the local jockeys were sitting in the jocks room watching their horses run out there with all these Hall of Fame riders. And I thought, wow, that is strong. That's the place I want to be. I want to have that kind of popularity. I want to have that kind of demand for my services. And I was one of the fortunate ones who, since I was doing so well in Maryland, I didn't lose my mouth to those guys, but a lot of the other riders did, and I was feeling bad for them. But that was great incentive for me to hone my skills while I was riding in Maryland against a very good colony of jockeys, and then at some point decide to move to the West Coast where the money was so much greater and the opportunities to ride good horses was greater, and you know, the opportunities to get to the Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont, and all the other big races, the Breeders' Cup, and so forth. So the Preakness had a great deal of influence on my enticing me to move to a stronger colony and where the money was so much greater.
Well, it was like an all-star team, right? Like the weekend that would come in, it literally resembled an all-star baseball weekend where Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the jockeys we only got to see on TV at Kentucky Derby and Belmont would come in with all these storied pests. And you know, I guess it was like a weekend junket, right? The riders would ride Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, and stay in for the weekend and then go back to wherever they're from. Kent DeSermo is another guy that came in that wasn't here long, right? And moved out. And I think that was part of the decay of Maryland was the purses started to get lower, right? And there was just so much more pressure, even on an Edgar Prado, to go ride elsewhere, right?
Yeah. Once you've reached a level of success at a certain place, if you feel confident that you can move up the ladder and ride against more talented riders, more successful riders that when I first moved out to the West Coast, there were about 6 guys or 8, maybe 8 guys that eventually went on to become Hall of Famers. And then Kent moved out there, and same thing, he went on to become a Hall of Famer, as did Prado when he moved to New York and was very successful. Maryland is a very good starting place for riders. They always have good riders there. They're skilled riders, and when you ride against them, you learn a lot. But then you can decide to move up and challenge yourself in a stronger colony, either New York or Southern California.
Chris McCarron, the Hall of Famer, is our guest in talking all things Preakness. Chris, tell everybody how to find you. I know if they're interested in the horse racing business and maybe buying a horse, and this is the kind of week where people go out and they fall in love and they have some disposable income and say, hey, I'd like to be a part of that. The Team Valor International site out there, I know it's there, but I know you live in Kentucky, and this is what you do around the clock.
Yeah, I was with a group of Verizon folks in their suite on Derby Day, and I pointed out in the program to them how many horses in the Derby were owned by syndicates, and those syndicates include anywhere from 5 to 30 people, and here they are running a horse in the Derby. They might own just a little piece of it, but they can be proud to say, I ran a horse in the Derby. And same thing with the Preakness. There'll be horses in the Preakness that are owned by multiple people. And the way to get a hold of me is Chris, CHRIS, at teamvalor.com. That's TEAMVALOR, teamvalor.com. That's simple. Chris teamvalor.com.
Chris, Bob Baffert comes in here, speaking of California, and with Justify and this incredible animal, and we've talked about American Pharoah and what it would mean to the industry if that happened. And I had Bob on earlier in the week, and he said this animal's not as nice as American Pharoah. Part of the beautiful story there was the people's champion, and the horse liked people. In the case of Justify, running through the rain with the incredible speed at the beginning of that race, and to hold up as well as Mike did, to be as clean as he was at the end. Thoughts about beating this horse here this week in a week where we're getting a lot of rain around here, and it appears to be a very wet track by the time we get to Saturday afternoon here.
Yeah, so obviously he's proven that he can run over a wet track. So I don't think if it rains, I don't think that's going to compromise his chances any. And I've looked hard at the other horses in the race. Good Magic ran a bang up race in the Derby. He's coming back. He just arrived at Pimlico, and he's probably one of the horses that has a chance to upset. He's a very consistent colt. He was 2-year-old champion last year, winning the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and he won the Bluegrass and was second in the Derby. So his form is steady, and it's right on. Another horse that's intriguing to me is Quip. He won the Tampa Bay Derby. He was second in the Arkansas Derby. The trainer wanted to run him in the Derby because of his form, but he had overlapping ownership with Justify, and the owners decided that they were going to go ahead and wait for the Preakness. So he's a fresh horse coming into Baltimore. So he's intriguing to me. If any horse in the race has a chance to upset Justify, I would say it would either be Quip or Good Magic.
In the case of Chad Brown running this horse again in 2 weeks, not something he's known to do, and as you pointed out, not something that's industry standard at this point, but saying that he would not run in the Belmont, there's certainly a school of thought for a whole litany of the horses that came up on the sloppy track 2 weeks ago to be able to come back and point toward Belmont to maybe take down Baffert if he wins again this week. That's where the industry's headed. That's what makes this thing so hard to do, right?
That's right. Yeah, Chad Brown's a future Hall of Famer. He's an outstanding trainer, and he's got an Eclipse Award-winning rider in Jose Ortiz. Jose is leading the country in Money One this year, and he's just a great rider. So this horse has everything going for him. And Chad, as good a horseman as he is, he wouldn't run this horse if he wasn't really training well. If he showed any kind of setback, if he looked like he was strained from the race and not bouncing back well, then Chad wouldn't be running him. So that gives me a lot of confidence that he's right, and then if he runs his race, he's got a good chance.
Nothing like
I still think it's going to be difficult to beat Justify.
Nothing like being down in Kentucky for you, right? I mean, amongst people that love that it's such a part of the culture there, and it's been a number of years, maybe 7 or 8 years since we've been down to the Kentucky Derby. My wife and I, we went to Laurel with the hat on. The weather was far better here. We looked at Churchill 2 weeks ago and said, "Yeah, we picked the right year to not go." But every time I put the television on, I see the NBC coverage. It sort of brings me back to wanting to go back down there. And I had Donna Brothers on earlier this week. Just so many people down there involved in the industry. It's such a part of in the water. Everyone knows how to read the form. It's where you want to be if you love horses, right?
Yeah, it certainly is. It's the thoroughbred capital of the world without question. And I live in a good spot. I live 15 minutes from Keeneland. I live 10 minutes from the Kentucky Horse Park, where there's a lot of equine events throughout the year. And I live just 10 minutes from the Thoroughbred Training Center, which is where my school that I had is located, and it's still going, the North American Racing Academy, which I started in 2006. And I taught for about 8 years and resigned from that to go on and do other things. And now I've got this job with Team Valor International, which I'm enjoying a great deal. But Kentucky is a wonderful place to live, and everybody knows about horses here. It's so much fun to be involved with neighbors and the community here. They're so in tune to racing, and Keeneland is such an unbelievable meet. They had on I guess it was Bluegrass Day, they had like 50,000 people. The grandstand is rather small compared to most other grandstands, but they have so much room at Keeneland. There's all kinds of tailgating. They probably have about 25,000 people that are not in the grandstand itself. They're out on the lawn. They have a place called The Hill where people tailgate all day long. They start showing up at 10 o'clock in the morning. You drive in there, and all of a sudden you can feel your blood pumping. It just it brings me back to the old days, and Keeneland does it right.
Yeah, Marty McGee's been trying to get me to Keeneland and to Saratoga for about 30 years now. So at some point my arm will get twisted and I'll make my way down there and do it all up. Chris McCarron is our guest here on behalf of Team Valor International, and always appreciate the visits with you over the years. And, you know, I still not a day you don't touch a horse, right? Like you're still touching horses 5-6 days a week, right?
No, well, not that often, but yeah, I'm still getting involved in the horses. It's in my blood. I can't do without it.
Can't shake it. Hey, great to visit with you. I know you're staying home in Kentucky and watching live via satellite this week. We'll hope to see you down at Churchill Downs. And don't be a stranger around here. Always a pleasure to have you on talking horse racing.
Thank you, Nestor. Call me anytime. I appreciate the time here.
You got it. The Hall of Famer, Chris McCarron, one time when I was a boy, I remember 7, 8, 9 years old when he was the leading rider here in the 70s. And Vince Bagley, every single night, would talk about Chris McCarron. We always got his name into the 6 o'clock newscast. So a tip of the cap there to Dino as well as Chris McCarron. A lot of racing around here this week. All the entries out on the front of WNST.net for Pimlico, as well as in our morning newspaper. Each and every morning it gets delivered at 7 a.m. Brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com and the BuyAToyota.com audio vault, chock full of horse racing information and analysis as we get up on the end of the week and the foul weather here. I got a lot of hockey. We got baseball. The Birds headed off to Fenway Park this weekend. But all of us will meet at Old Hilltop on Saturday. 140,000 last year. We'll see how we do this year. The bands, the bottomless cup, the hats. My wife has her hat as well. It is Preakness 143, and all of our coverage presented in part by our friends at Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at every single thing they do. Every person at Howard Bank empowered to help you. See them and learn more at Howard Bank. There's one popping up right around the corner from you. Also, Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast, and the Kona Blend coffee in your mug. Make sure you're using that app when you're getting your gas. Those points will add up. You'll be able to get free Western fries, free chicken, free coffee. It's Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Don't forget the Rofo Arena also will be hosting the Baltimore Brigade game on May 25th. They're taking on the Philadelphia Soul. That's Ron Jaworski's team. We're going to get Jaws on here next week to talk all things arena football. But for this week, I'm doing a lot of racing around here, a little bit of hockey, a little bit of baseball, mixing in a little Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. But this is the 1 week a year where we really sort of own the horse racing world. It all comes to us and the Kentucky Derby winner and Bob Baffert in the stall out there on Winter Avenue as Justify comes in an odds-on favorite. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Full coverage of all things hockey and baseball and certainly horse racing throughout the week and the Pink Festival and the Black-Eyed Susan on Friday. All of it available, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and I stream live on our Facebook Live and our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. Nasty at WNST.net finds me 24 hours a day for praise, criticism, or a little bit of help on the road trips that we got going with Ray Lewis going to Canton, as well as our 2 road trips to Nashville and Carolina for football season. The Nashville trip's almost sold out, so jump on that under the road trips tab at WNST.net. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.